This talk will be a bit about quantum divide as well, not just science communication, so there's that. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to divide a little bit of an introduction and then talk about knowledge barriers, where I'll talk mostly about hype. Then I'll discuss how this merges with quantum divide. Sorry. And well, just wrap up. There's going to be a lot of connections, so hopefully everything is clear. So a little bit about me. I don't think that's necessary. I was already introduced, but I just want to emphasize the most important part, I think, are the two last ones. I'm Brazilian, so I'm from the Global South. There is a bit of a discussion whether to use this word. I'm using here because I think fits the purposes, but the other things that I'm doing science communication since 2019. Oh, okay. Hello? Hello? Okay. So I've been doing science communication since 2019, both as an individual and as a group. I think this talk will be a bit more on the human side, similar to your talk, Michelle. So I think there's a lot of elements of bringing back the human side, more on the science communicator point of view. Just talk a little bit of CMC, but that's not quite related to my work, since my work at CMC is more technical. But just so you know, CMC is this Canadian company. I'm staff scientist there, so I do both quantum algorithms, help by ourselves, helping others, industry, academics. We do training. A bit on the hardware side, there's also device design, prototype, helping with fabrication of prototypes. And for the software side, training as well, and access to quantum computing clouds, IBM, Pascal, depends. We have several partnerships. Sorry, I cannot make it. Okay, that's the. Okay, so my approach might be a bit different because I'm gonna talk both about quantum tech and quantum mysticism, kind of together. It is something that I always raise questions why I'm bringing the two of them together. Is because I don't think they can be divorced. Here's, for instance, is a video of someone claiming that we live in a simulation created by a quantum computer. And this video is insane, okay? This video, unfortunately, I cannot show because it's in Portuguese, but she starts saying that we live in a simulation created by a quantum computer, and then she proceeds not to talk about quantum computers anymore. She talks about like string theory, and then neurons, goes on and on and on. 50K likes. This is something that I've been noticed, quantum mysticism, since 2019, I've been seeing quantum mysticism a lot everywhere. And later on, I'm gonna talk about how difficult it is to compete with that in social media. But then I noticed that people starting co-opting quantum computing as well, lingo, to add on the quantum mysticism. Now they're using like decoherence, quantum computers, like, Jesus Christ. So that's why I'm considering everything together, because they feed on each other. Of course, varies a bit from culture to culture. And I'll also start with maybe a call out for some of the excuses that I hear whenever people don't want to engage with science communication. I think a few of you guys are familiar with those. And here's where it touches on the quantum divide. We have plenty of accessible content in English. Here's English proficiency. That's not quite helpful, right? And one thing about this graph is that the light blue is moderate. I think it's a bit misleading because it looks like the light blue is high, but it's actually moderate. So that means that a bunch of countries, they either don't speak too much English or they speak moderate, which is most of them. So who is it for, right? Those English contents. Are they working well? the aliens with quantum computers. I don't know if everyone will get this reference. And I don't want to call names, but someone, a very famous physicist, science communicator, went to a podcast, and he talked about how aliens, if they exist, they probably have a quantum computer. He just said that in a very famous podcast. I don't know. I don't want to mention names. If you guys want to know who was this person, sorry. So if you guys want to know who is this person, just ask me. But yeah, very famous podcast, very famous person. And it's very frustrating because then if I'm from Brazil say, oh, wow, that's not true, they're going to be like, this very famous person, a very famous podcast said that. Who are you, right? So I want to bring attention to this because the mysticism and the quantum hype, once it gets translated, it just makes it worse. Because translations also is already a difficulty per se. When you translate, you can lose meaning. But also there's all this appeal to authority from like a person from US or whatever. They saying something like this, and then you're like, how do I find that? You know? Here's an illustration of what happens when you search is quantum in Portuguese versus in English. So English side, you can see the questions are like, is quantum physics real, proven, deterministic? And in the Portuguese side, they're asking, a few of them is like, is it science, is it proven? But here's like spirituality, law of attraction, God, spirituality again. And yeah, like 7 out of 10 is about spirituality and Bible or something. Here's social media. The left side is if you search quantum physics in TikTok, here is in Instagram. Left side, some people may notice that's not even Portuguese, that's Spanish. So, like, and the words are not the same, okay? The word quantum is different in Portuguese and Spanish, so I don't know why it shows up. But you may recognize this as Dirac's equation. And what it's saying there is that Dirac's equation is the love equation. And that means that if you are connected by love, you're connected forever, or something like this. Like, okay. And there's on Instagram, I think only the first one is legitimate. It's talking about quantum phenomena. The other ones are talking about chakra. This one's talking about aliens. This one's talking about gender for some reason. And yeah, mostly about law of attraction. And you can see already the difficulty of using hashtag quantum physics to sell your work, because that's what happens, you know? Yeah, so the Brandoline's law, forgive me the word, is also called bullshit asymmetry principle, is much harder to debunk than it is to just spread lies, you know? And yeah, the translation plays a big part of it. If you don't cut to the core, or like the first offenders, it makes much harder for you to try to legitimize this later on. Second thing that people say when they don't want to engage in science communications is that it's not worth it because it is too hard. Quantum mechanics is too hard. And I really hate this one. If you're related to Homer Simpson, maybe reconsider what you're doing, right? Like, everyone's stupid, but you. And that relates to what Zach mentioned about this quote that I think is so damaging. First of all, the issue with like making it difficult to engage. But in a more personal note, people use this to bother science communicators. Whenever you say, oh, I'm posting about science communication, like about physics, and I talk about, I don't know, quantum network. And someone will come out of the blue to say, no one understands quantum mechanics. What are you talking about? What are you trying to talk about? Especially if you're trying to do something more simplified. People just say, well, you don't know, because it's impossible to know, because they learned from this quote. And the third one is that it's not hurting anyone. A little bit of hype is good for investment, which is also debatable, because if you hype too much, you start losing investment at some point, right? Because you're not delivering enough. And here's a photo that I took nearby my house. It says there's a bunch of therapies, including like, how to say, feng shui, like hypnosis, but also there's two quantum therapies, quantum table, and this one is quantum healing. I don't know, there's at least two that are quantum. And the issue is people are spending money on this. People are believing this as like some sort of healing, right? Which is not a global south problem. Just to be clear, I'm looking into data about this. That's why I'm saying that's not necessarily a global south problem, but then again, it's also everything's kind of an S. I don't know if you're familiar with this word, conspirituality. This is both a podcast and a book. It's quite interesting about the relationship between spirituality and conspiracy theories and the pipelines of extremism that you can go through with this. And this person may look familiar. He is one of the people that were in the Capitol insurrection. And he is claiming here that what they did on January 6th is evolution conscience, and it was affecting the quantum realm. So, how many of you are familiar with what he said? Yeah. Yeah, so, and we let this slide, you know? I don't remember anyone fighting back this, but this is very irresponsible for us not to fight back, right? Because what does it mean, you know? And this is a little bit of, just to illustrate, this is Google Trends. I don't know if you're familiar, but you can search up search terms or topics. And topics is kind of like search term, but it also translates. And this is the trend between what people are looking from the last 5 years, quantum healing in blue and quantum computing in red. And this is for the US. So you can see there's a difference of interest between quantum computing and quantum healing. There's a healthy gap. People are still more interested in quantum computing. In Brazil, it's a bit different, just out of example, Brazil, but you can find this same pattern in different countries. This is the pattern for Brazil. And if you saw this presentation before, maybe that's not what you've seen before. This is what you've seen before. I'm going to go back to that. Until 2023, you can see there is a big fight between quantum healing and quantum computing. They are competing for attention. And as I mentioned, in social media, this is very easy to see, right? They're competing for attention. That was the part that I was most actively, as a science communicator, that was rough. Nowadays, October 2023 is when we got a big investment. That's why I started showing up at the Curriculum map. So this is where you can start getting this sort of pattern. Finally, people are more interested in quantum computing, so that's something interesting as well. Yeah, but before that, this is what we're dealing with. Other countries have similar patterns like this. It's not half time. Yeah, hopefully I'm more towards the end, but I'll try to be faster. So yeah, it is overlooked, not always for the best reasons, as we know. Translation makes it worse, and it goes beyond quantum industry, so it is quite related in very weird ways. A little about the quantum divide. I need to be faster. This is not up-to-date map, sorry. Now I noticed that that's 2024. But anyways, it's still like the message still stands. I don't know if you can read the top, but just saying 15 billion for some and 0 for others. There's a very clear difference in investment. There's the issue with the harvest now, decrypt later, which is always, well, if you don't know, it's about how Shor's algorithm can eventually decrypt our current cryptography is the most used one, the most used ones. And they can just store the data now to decrypt eventually, right? And what people say is that there's plenty of time, we just need to migrate. This is a solved problem because we already have post-quantum cryptography. And then I think we need to consider, first of all, transition is not trivial. This is the US. The US has the plan for 10 years. If the US has a plan for 10 years, like the other countries need to catch up much faster, probably. But not faster than the US, but they're probably already planning. They were like the ones heading the NIST studies for PQC, right? So that's their timeline. The timelines need to be kind of similar, but what do you do when your country is completely disengaged with this, right? This is not trivial. This requires effort, time, specialized knowledge, and people think that will happen magically for some reason. This table is from a paper called Quantum Computing and the G77, and is about, the G77, so countries in development, and the different levels of sovereignty. So it's explaining how the first group both has the capability and money, investment, and governmental interests to do this. So China, India, Singapore. Other groups, not as much. And those groups, most of the countries, they have only cloud access, pretty much. And cloud access is very complicated because it can, if some agreement change, some like terms of usage change, if something geopolitically changed, you get this like completely cut off. So that's what you mean by quantum sovereignty. It's very, there are several levels for sovereignty, right? And another thing is that like quantum computers don't protect you from a quantum computer. This is something that seems to be, should be obvious. What protects you from a quantum computer is post-quantum cryptography, maybe QQD, something else. But it seems to be such a push for quantum computers. Even though some countries are not engaged in that, don't have money for that, maybe we'll divert the monies from quantum computers that like what should be for post-quantum, which is protect yourself. There's a bunch of issues. But there's this such a big push for quantum computers, which is also a hype problem, right? Just to connect those two, there's a knowledge gap created by lack of information, and I'm not including the fact that there's a difficulty just in quality of access to equipment, access to papers. There's a whole lot of issues in terms of divide of access of knowledge, but I focus mostly on outreach. It makes it difficult to attract talent, to train talent for quantum and post-quantum, which can be different in industry, right? Because post-quantum tends to have include knowledge on classical cryptography. Makes it difficult to discuss ethics, governance, policies, which are important things, but they are always pushed, like postponed, and prepared for security problems, because if you're not aware of security problems, if you think this technology is far away, or in some cases people think that quantum computing is also mysticism. I had this happening to me. Like when I was planning quantum computing, people thought that I was a charlatan because quantum physics is so associated with mysticism. So it's a whole thing. It's very difficult. Those things snowball a bit. Have 1 minute. So are we discussing the quantum divide enough? Here's the 10 principles for responsible quantum innovation. This is a paper. This is just a brief thing that I'm going to mention because some preliminary results from something else. This paper just lists a bunch of different points of interest in terms of building a responsible initiative. National strategy, for instance, and it revolves about security, being aware of dual use, education, analyzing societal relevance. And one of the points is quantum gap, which is understand that is this divide between countries that have or not have the resources to work to have quantum technologies. And these are preliminary analysis about how emphasized this is in the national quantum strategies. These are just a few selected countries that we chose to look. And not many of them are looking at quantum gap, pretty much, which is the fourth principle over there. A few of them are 0%. South Korea, congrats, you guys are the 2%, that's the biggest one. So this is very overlooked. People are not noticing this issue. And the comments is that it's not only morally problematic, but it's suboptimal in terms of innovation. You have better innovation if you include everyone. There's also the issue of the supply chain. Sometimes some of the materials that you need come from the Global South. So there's a whole thing to consider in terms of the quantum divide that really is not ideal. I really wish the moral argument would be enough, though. I think it's important to not create disparities, right? We have enough problems already. So to conclude, quantum divide and science outreach are correlated. The bad science outreach correlates a lot with dividing even more. The solution should include both of them, Global North and Global South. From the paper I mentioned about the 10 principles, they suggest a few things. They suggest a permanent forum between all the countries to discuss things together, which I think is nice. And R&D projects that would include and think of inclusive and equitable access, not just for the quantum computer services, but also for the what comes out of it, right? The solutions, right? And beyond that, what you can do in terms of science communication. I think one important thing to do is to be aware of bad communication, to call out bad communication, to not let it slide, because this will be used against someone for sure. And to disseminate this kind of a discussion about the quantum divide, the importance, the social importance of good science communication, the inequalities that come with this, those are very individual things that I believe should be done. Yes.